at my 6. And while I drink this coffee, before I go off and find that there Bigfoot Sasquatch, it may or may not be living in the woods back here behind my house, I'm going to tell you a story. Something that happened about this time of year, almost 20 years ago. So, it was just beginning to become fall. It was Indian summer. The poplar leaves and the walnut leaves were starting to turn yellow. Had the goldenrod coming up in the fields and the meadows and all the hay fields here in this part of Central Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains. You could feel fall coming. The humidity had been gone for the year. The evenings were getting crisp. The nights were clear. And I was going through a divorce. So I wasn't the happiest of campers during those days. But I had a couple sets of friends, guy and a girl and a guy and a girl. One of the couples were married. One of them were not. They were engaged. They invited me to go spend a weekend with them at one of the ladies' families. It was a property that was inherited. It had been in the property for 6 or 8 generations. It's since been sold. It was a large property, and as the family continued to be passed down the line, and with the estate tax that was in place back then, the family, who used to be wealthy, no longer was, and it eventually got sold. At the time, it was a property that was kind of being shared by just about everybody in the family, at random. It was in Orange County, Virginia, not far from where I am here, out in Horse Country. It was about a 200-acre piece of land that had a giant brick mansion on it that predated. It was built before the Civil War. That's how far back this goes. The property had a very large pond, probably 5 or 6 acres, that was filled with bass, largemouth bass. Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. So we got there on a Friday, and I knew these folks through work. That's back when I was in the financial planning industry. And there was a couple of hours of daylight left before it got dark. So this was the first time I'd ever been to this property. This was back before the days of Google Maps. So I'd written down the directions and followed them closely on my road atlas. Got there, didn't really have enough time to take a grand tour of the property, but we walked around the manor proper, and back behind the main house, you drop down over the hill about 250 yards into a little clearing, because it was kind of a wooded area going down to this clearing. And in the clearing, there was a small cottage. And we were explained by our hostess that used to be a groundskeeper's house, gardener, whatnot, many generations ago. She said nobody had lived in that cottage for at least 3 generations. So she showed us where the lake was, and that's where we'd planned, at least me and the 2 other guys, at least had planned on spending most of our time there that weekend. They had a rule, it was catch and release only, and I understand that, because, I mean, these things were like, we didn't catch any whoppers, but on Saturday, we caught so many that were about 18, 20, 22 inches, 6 to 8 pound bass, just one after another. It was a fisherman's dream. So that night, the first night there, we're having dinner. And this is the oddest thing, because I've never seen anybody flip their crap like this over something so small. I knew both of the guys somewhat well, because they're who I worked with, and I'd been around their partners, the one guy's wife and the other guy's fiance, a few times, but I didn't know them as well as the guys. But we're having dinner, and the guy who was not married but was engaged to this other girl, and he was a little bit older than us. We were in our late 20s, me and the one guy. This guy was in his late 30s, and the girls were in their late 20s. He had prepared like this big spaghetti and meatballs dinner that he brought with us. He was of Italian ancestry. He loved to cook, and it was delicious. It was absolutely delicious, spaghetti and meatballs. But about halfway through the meal, his fiance just loses her crap. She starts screaming, "Where's my turkey balls?" I was like, what? I've never heard anybody just from out of nowhere start screaming about turkey balls. And I'm thinking, well, are these the Virginia Tech Hokies wondering what they did with all the leftovers? But boom, you probably don't get that. You know what a Hokie is? A neutered turkey. So where do they put them all once they make it a Hokie? I was thinking, is this what this woman's screaming about? But no, what it was, her fiance, he did face palm, and this is back before face palms were cool or even a thing. He says, oh my God, I forgot. I guess the thing is, the girl preferred turkey burger, turkey meat, turkey bacon, like I myself do for health purposes, over beef. And she wasn't happy about these beef meatballs. And she got up, left the table, kicked a hole in the wall, slammed the door to her bedroom, and locked it. And the guy immediately looked at the other girl. Of course, that was her family's estate. And the girl's like, can't believe this woman just kicked a hole through this wall of this house. It was about 200 years old. And the guy's like, I will pay to have that fixed. I will fix it. I don't know what's going on here. I've never seen her like this ever before. So he gets up. He goes, demands that the girl let him in, which she finally did. So he goes in, and they're pretty much in there arguing all night. So I thought, wow, some weekend. You know, I'm here because my marriage just broke up, and it looks like these two's going to break up before they even make it official, because they were just in there arguing. So me and the other couple were there, and the home had this beautiful stone fireplace. And again, it was late September, getting ready to turn October. The nights were pretty cold. Not cold, they were chilly and they were crisp. So we built a fire. There was plenty of firewood in there. There was no TV. It was a wonderful thing. So I'm looking around on the bookshelves, looking through all the old books. I find a shelf that has board games on it. And on top of the board games is a Ouija board. A Ouija board. I pulled it out. I was like, oh my God, look at this. And they're like, no. My other friends, I'm like, come on, this is such a wonderful setting for something like this, because it's so, creepy. It's so old. Nobody lives here full time. And this girl's in here losing her mind over, those turkey balls. So we get the Ouija board out, and we're just playing with it, doing our best, based upon what we've seen on, 80s horror movies on how you're supposed to use them. And we're, asking, is anybody there? And of course it goes to yes. And I'm thinking my buddy's pushing it, and they're thinking that I'm pushing it. And so we say, who's there? And this thing starts moving around the letters. It goes G, A, R, D, E, N, E, R, Gardner. And at that moment, we hear the girl that's in the bedroom all upset over, not getting her turkey balls, just scream at like this high pitch and a big loud bang. And it kind of brought us to out of concentrating on what we were doing. And then the guy comes out of the room and he says, okay, I think she's done. She's fallen asleep. We'll see you guys tomorrow. I terribly apologize for this. And we're like, okay. So he goes back in there, and we put the Ouija board away. We felt kind of creeped out about that situation. Talked for, a couple hours, went to bed ourselves. The next morning, I'm always up early, and even back then I was always up early. I got up before sunrise. It was dawn, you could see, but the sun had not crested above the horizon yet, and I went for a run. So I went outside and I ran down through what had once been a road, which was now just a trail that ran down through the wooded area that went to the clearing where that cottage was. And just before I come out of the wooded area, I look over and I see the cottage, and I clearly see that there's a light on in this cottage. So I go back behind some more trees and pop out into the clearing. There's nothing obstructing my view from the cottage now. It's right there in front of me, and there is no light on. And the sun had just started to come up above the horizons. So I thought, well, I must have seen the sunlight refracting through the glass windows or something like that, or reflecting from maybe a mirror in there or something, but it was an illusion. Ran for half an hour or so, got back up there. My friends had gotten up while I was running. One of the girls it was a girl that had lost her crap the night before. She prepared breakfast. She apologized to everybody. We ate. We were like, oh, it's okay, like no big deal. And at least she remembered to bring turkey bacon. So we had turkey bacon for breakfast. Those poor birds, those poor Hokies, that would have to hurt. Who would want that as a mascot? I mean, I can imagine saying, hey, our mascot has bigger what's in yours, but to say, hey, look at our mascot, we cut him off. Okay, so me and the guys were fishing all day, catching the big ones, like I'm telling you about. No real monsters, but they're all nice. They're all keepers, but again, we couldn't keep them. The girls hung out all day, did whatever. They came down to the lake a couple times, brought us lunch once. Everything was great. We're having a good time. We fished until almost dark. It was almost too dark to see by the time we started heading back up to the house. So we took the shortcut that would take us through the meadow where the cottage was and up the trail to the manor house. So we're coming toward the cottage from the opposite direction from which I ran the morning before. Thought I'd seen a light. And one of the guys said, there's a light on in that house. And we look over, and just as I look over, it appears as if there is a light on in that little cottage, but it goes out. And it just so happened that was the time the sun was dropping back behind the horizon on the other side. And so I told him, I saw something like that this morning. I think it's the sun playing with, either the glass or the mirrors. And the guys were like, yeah, and we're probably a little bit dehydrated because we've been fishing all day. We've been in the sun. We've been hydrating, but not with stuff you're supposed to hydrate with to stay hydrated, if you know what I mean. I'm not talking about coffee. So we pass the cottage. Just as we enter the forested part to start up the trail to where the manor was, we clearly heard a door slam from the direction of the cottage. It was the only building down there. So we turned around. We went back. We're creeping around. We're like surrounding this thing. Me and one guy, we go around one side. The other guy goes around the other. We meet up at the front door of the cottage and we knock, which we feel stupid and silly knocking because the place looks completely abandoned. It doesn't look like anybody has lived there in generations. We try the doorknob. Not only is it locked and rattly, it's dusty. There was dust on my hand after we tried the knob, so clearly it had not been in use. But we all agreed we'd heard a door slam. It was the strangest thing. So we go up to the manor, and the girls, they'd already prepared dinner. I can't even remember what it was, but I know nobody lost their crap over the food at least. So we're having dinner, and just like the night before, about halfway through dinner, this girl did lose her crap. It had nothing to do with what was being served for dinner, but she just starts screaming, "Are you sleeping with her? Are you sleeping with her?" to her fiance, who was like just instantly like, what in the heck is this crazy woman talking about? And me and my buddy are like, what is she talking about? Who is she talking about? And my buddy's friend, the other girl was like a little bit thinking, I hope she's not talking about me. So the woman's fiance says, sleeping with who? And the woman starts screaming, you know exactly who I'm talking about. You know exactly who I'm talking about. And she gets up, stomps off into the bedroom again, slams the door. She didn't kick any walls this time. Our buddy gets up, follows suit. We go back in the living room, same as the night before, start a fire, start joking about the Ouija board from the night before, but we decided to pull it out again. And once again, we got the same results. A presence claimed to be there, claimed to be the gardener. So I was convinced one of my two friends were playing a joke on me. They thought it was me. We put the Ouija board away again, continued to sit in front of the fire, continued to talk. I don't know, 20 or 30 minutes go by after we put the Ouija board away, after it spelled gardener. The door of the bedroom where the woman's in there losing her crap comes flying open, and you hear her stomping out across the floor and says, is it her? Points at, our friend's wife. And then her fiance comes up and says, no, come on now, this is embarrassing. Well, she breaks free of him, stomps across the living room. There's some back windows that overlook the hill out back down into the clearing where the cottage is. And then the woman screams, or is it her? And why is she in our house? And we're like, what? We all get up. We go to the window. We look down. Clearly, we all see a light on in that cottage. And then the light goes out. The minute we're all there, long enough to see it, it goes out. Crazy girl, or a girl who had been perfectly normal up until this night, goes stomping back to the bedroom. Her fiance follows her. They slam the door. They're arguing. They're screaming. They're arguing. They're screaming. My friend's wife, who's there with us, turns around and she says, oh my God, we have to get the letter F out of here. And we're like, why? What do we have to get out of here for? And she goes, I just remembered part of our family's urban legend / folklore history has to do with that cottage and a gardener that we had down there like 4 or 5, like around the time of the Civil War. We're like, what are you talking about? And she said, look, here's the story. The first generation or second generation, whatever, that owned this manor, their family was still very, very wealthy at the time. They had a gardener who was an Italian man, an Italian immigrant. He lived down in that cottage with his wife, who he had met here in America. They lived there together. And when the family that owned the property, that lived in the manor, when they would be away on either business or visiting others or just vacationing, the gardener and his wife would stay in the manor and be the caretaker of the place and make sure there were no intruders at night, etc., while the family were gone. Well, it turns out the gardener's wife had taken her own life because she believed that her husband, the gardener, was having an affair with the woman of the house, the woman who owned the house. And when the gardener discovered his wife dead and saw what she had done, he took his life. So it was like a double suicide, all because the woman said no one ever knew if there was an affair going on or not, but those events took place. And so we kind of thought, we made a connection with the Ouija board, the activity going on with the cottage with the lights, the strange light play that we had all witnessed now, that I'd witnessed personally at least twice, and the way this woman was acting. There was a connection. We made the connection. We went and we got our friends and we said, we have to leave. We have to get out of here tonight or things are only going to get worse. The woman that was losing her crap was more than happy to leave because she said she was calling off the wedding. She was leaving not just where we were, but she was leaving him and etc. We packed our stuff. We got out of there. We went to our friend's house, the woman whose family actually owned the property, her and her husband's house, because they lived closest. They were still about an hour away. And we went there, and that's where we spent the night. And from the minute we walked in that house, because we had 3 separate cars, that other woman was perfectly normal, perfectly sane. And as we talked over the events, recapped the events that had taken place over the previous 48 hours, she did not remember them. She remembered hanging out with that other girl all day while we were fishing, and she remembers the meals we ate, but she didn't remember going off about the turkey balls. She didn't remember kicking a hole in the wall, screaming all night, both nights, arguing with her fiance, and she certainly didn't remember threatening to leave him. We didn't get to finish our weekend out at that old manor, that old estate, and we never went back. And now that I'm finished with my coffee, I have something I have to do. Hope you enjoyed this story. Hope you'll go to our Etsy store. The link is in the description box below. You can get autographed copies of many titles of my print books, among other things. And I hope, more than that even, that you come back for a video again tomorrow. See you then.